The morning sun had barely risen when Camille Brown dragged her old wicker basket to the roadside, the same spot where she had sold fish for years. Her hands were cracked from salt and cold water, and the heavy smell of the sea clung to her clothes like a second skin. She sat quietly, arranging the fish one by one, hoping to earn enough to buy rice for the evening meal. She spoke to no one. She never did. She had learned that silence was cheaper than dignity lost. Cars and pedestrians passed by, some glancing with pity, others with indifference. Camille kept her eyes down. For her, this street corner was not business. It was survival. Then suddenly, the low rumble of a motorcycle broke the stillness. It screeched to a stop only a few steps away. Inspector Marcus Doyle, a man known for his temper and misuse of power, stepped off the bike with a cold, irritated look on his face. His boots hit the ground hard as if he needed to remind everyone he was the authority. He didn't greet her. He didn't ask questions. He simply barked. "Who gave you permission to sit here? You're blocking the road." Camille slowly lifted her head. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She had been chased away before, but never like this. The inspector's anger rose even more at her silence. "Do you think this is your private property? Get up and move before I make you." Before she could gather her things, his boot swung forward with brutal force. The basket flipped. The fish scattered across the dusty street. A sharp gasp came from the crowd as the smell spread around them. Camille froze. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the fallen fish, trying desperately to collect them before the dirt and shoes crushed them. Her eyes were filling, blurring, but she did not cry aloud. The inspector leaned closer, mocking her in front of everyone. "You people never learn. You belong somewhere out of sight, not here." People had gathered now. Men, women, shopkeepers, watching like it was a street performance. No one stepped forward. No one defended her. Some even smirked, entertained by her humiliation. Among the crowd, a young man lifted his phone and started recording. He recognized injustice when he saw it, but he wasn't brave enough to intervene physically. His fingers shook as he zoomed in on Camille's tear-streaked face, and the inspector towering above her like a predator. Camille swallowed her pain, kneeling in the dirt, trying to salvage what little she still had. Every second of silence cut deeper than any insult. She thought of her daughters far away, strong, disciplined, fearless, and a single thought echoed in her heart. "If they ever knew what I endure, they would burn the world for me." But she said nothing. She kept her head down, not knowing that her humiliation had already become a story the world was about to see. That afternoon, the sun dipped lower in the sky while the world continued its routine, but the video of Camille's humiliation had already begun its quiet rise through the internet. First shared by a local passerby, then reposted by a page known for exposing injustice, it spread like sparks across dry grass. Comments flooded beneath it. Shock, anger, outrage. How could he treat her like this? That old woman did nothing wrong. This is abuse of power. Within hours, the clip reached thousands of phones. Among them, the phone of Nia Brown. Nia was in the middle of a morning briefing at her training base when her device buzzed repeatedly. At first, she ignored it. Discipline came before distractions, but the constant vibration forced her to check. She saw a message from a friend with only 3 words. "Isn't this your mom?" She tapped the link. There on her screen, she saw the bent figure of an elderly woman kneeling in the dirt. The broken basket. The scattered fish. A boot. Her throat tightened. She recognized the shawl before the face, the same one her mother wore every winter. Her breathing grew heavy. There was no sound in her head, no voices, no echo. Only a sudden red wave of disbelief turning into fury. Her heart hammered as she whispered, "No, no, he didn't touch her." But he had. The slap, plain as daylight, replayed again and again as she watched the inspector lean over Camille, full of arrogance and cruelty. Nia's hands trembled. For the first time in years she felt powerless, not as an officer but as a daughter. She didn't finish the video. She hit forward. Sent it to one person, the only person she trusted with rage this big. Her big sister Rachel Brown. Rachel was miles away on deployment when her screen lit up with Nia's urgent message. She opened the clip silently and froze mid-breath. Her jaw clenched so tight her teeth ached. She didn't blink as she watched her mother struggle alone, humiliated before strangers who behaved like spectators at a show. For a long moment she said nothing. No tears. No trembling. Only a storm building behind her eyes. She called Nia immediately. The moment her sister answered, she didn't wait, didn't greet, didn't breathe. "I'm going back." Nia's voice cracked. "I'm coming with you." "No," Rachel replied firmly. "Not yet. I need you to stay where you are. I'll bring her out of this myself." There was silence, heavy, burning, unspoken. Then Nia answered, soft but sharp as steel. "Then make sure he pays." Rachel ended the call, shut her locker, and stared into her reflection. Not as an officer. Not as a soldier. As a daughter. She packed in silence. Not out of fear but purpose. 'Cause this was no longer a video. This was her mother's dignity. And dignity was something she had sworn to protect long before she ever wore a uniform. Tomorrow justice would start moving. Rachel arrived before sunrise. She didn't wear her uniform. Only a plain dress, simple earrings, and a calm expression that hid a rising storm. She walked straight home, her boots echoing through the narrow street. When her mother opened the door and saw her standing there, tears filled her eyes instantly. Camille tried to act strong, to wipe her face, to pretend nothing was wrong. But daughters know. Rachel placed a hand on her mother's shoulder and said quietly, "You don't have to be brave today. I will be brave for you." That afternoon she retraced every detail. Where Camille sat, where the basket fell, how the crowd reacted. She memorized it like evidence. Then she found the young man who filmed the scene. His name was Eli. He hesitated at first, unsure if stepping forward was safe. Rachel didn't threaten him. She didn't beg. She simply said, "Silence protects the aggressor. Truth protects the victim." Those words were enough. Eli handed her the original footage. Uncut, unfiltered proof of everything. With the video stored securely, she walked toward the police station. Each step was steady, controlled, military, even though the uniform was absent. When she pushed open the door, the room fell silent. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Harold Pierce, sat behind the front desk, leaning lazily in his chair. Rachel approached him and said calmly, "I'm here to file a complaint. An officer under your command assaulted my mother in public." He barely looked at her. He laughed under his breath. If she was selling illegally, she got what she deserved. "We don't entertain nonsense complaints." Rachel didn't blink. "The law does not grant you the right to harm an unarmed civilian. You will register the complaint." Pierce leaned forward, smug and dismissive. "Listen, girl. I don't know who you think you are, but this office is not run by emotional daughters. If I wanted to, I could throw you out right now." He expected fear. He expected retreat. What he received instead was silence. The kind of silence that precedes a verdict. Slowly, Rachel took a small leather wallet from her pocket, opened it, and placed her military identification card on his desk. His smirk vanished. His back straightened. His eyes widened. You're an officer." "Yes," she replied coldly. "And you just refused to register a legal complaint from a victim's family, while defending the abuser." He began stuttering. I didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you said. And now I will take this higher." She turned around and headed for the door. Every officer in the room watched her leave. Not one dared to stop her. In that moment they realized something. This was not just a daughter grieving. This was a soldier moving. Rachel stepped back into the light of the street, her decision already made. If justice would not come from the station, she would bring justice to the station. Tomorrow she would not return alone. The next morning the city did not wake up to silence. It woke up to fire. The uncut video was now everywhere. Shared, reposted, commented. Millions of people saw Camille collapse under humiliation while officers laughed. The streets buzzed with anger. People no longer whispered, they questioned loudly. Rachel moved with precision. She wore her uniform this time. Polished boots, sharp posture, controlled authority. She didn't come alone. Journalists were already waiting outside the police station, microphones raised, cameras rolling. Inside, tension spread like smoke. Lieutenant Pierce was sweating behind his desk. He had seen the video. He had seen the comments. He now understood. This was no longer a complaint. This was exposure. When Rachel entered, every officer stood straighter, instinctively recognizing rank and discipline. She didn't shout. She didn't rage. She commanded. I am here to file a formal misconduct report against Officer Davis and all supervising personnel who witnessed the assault and failed to intervene. The station chief tried to intervene, performing a weak smile. Officer Rachel, let us resolve this quietly. There is no need for media drama. She met his eyes, unwavering. There is no drama. There is documentation. She placed a printed still image from the video on the table. The exact moment Camille was pushed to the ground. Gasps rippled through the room. It was no longer rumor. It was proof carved in time. The chief exhaled nervously. A temporary suspension will be issued while we review. No, she cut in, sharp as a blade. Suspension is not justice. Suspension is waiting for the public to forget. She leaned forward, voice low but lethal. Accountability is the only review. Outside, reporters were already shouting questions. Is the department trying to cover the abuse? Will there be arrests? Why was the victim left bleeding on the street? Inside, panic brewed. The chief finally realized what he was facing. Not a grieving child. A commanding officer declaring war on abuse. A senior investigator was hastily called in. Rachel watched him sign the order. Officer Davis, suspended. Supervisor involvement, under internal review. Video, officially entered into evidence. But the turning point came next. When the investigator asked, "Do you wish to settle this internally?" Rachel answered with the calm of someone who had already won. No. This goes to the civil court. This goes to the ethics commission. And this goes to the people who watched my mother bleed. A silence fell. Deep, heavy, irreversible. In that moment the station understood. This would not be buried. This would not fade. This was a case the world was now watching. She turned to leave, cameras flashing behind the door's glass panel. When she stepped outside, the crowd erupted, not cheering her uniform but her courage. The storm had begun. And justice was no longer a request. It was a countdown. The hearings were scheduled within days. What once would have been buried in silence was now under the public spotlight. Rachel did not attend as a daughter. She attended as an officer testifying against misconduct. Every word she spoke was measured, deliberate, and irrefutable. The footage was played before the review board. No excuses survived it. No lies could soften it. When Camille appeared before the panel, she did not speak of pain, she spoke of dignity. Her voice trembled only once when she said, "I was not asking for pity. I was asking to be treated like a human being." The room bowed into silence. The verdict came like a door slamming shut on impunity. Officer Davis, terminated from service. Supervisors, disciplined for negligence. The precinct, placed under civil oversight. But it didn't end there. A foundation for street vendors' protection was announced by the Ethics Commission, a measure that would exist because one woman refused to let humiliation be the last word. Days later, Rachel walked beside her mother through the marketplace. This time people didn't stare with pity. They stood to greet her with respect. Some thanked Camille quietly. Others simply placed a hand over their heart as she passed. Not a gesture of charity, but acknowledgement. The young man who filmed the scene, Eli, approached and said softly, Your courage changed things for all of us. Camille smiled for the first time without pain. Not because justice punished, but because justice restored. As the sun began to set, she turned to her daughter. I raised you to stand tall, and now you have lifted me back to my feet. Rachel took her mother's hand, not as an officer, not as a hero, but simply as a daughter reclaiming what humiliation tried to steal. The world had seen her fall, and now the world had seen her rise. And in that quiet moment, beneath the warm light of evening, it was clear. Dignity is not granted by uniforms or authority. It is born from courage, and protected by truth. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And tell me in the comments, from which country are you watching me?